and of course Mrs. Paradorou for the beautiful discussion. And we'll move on to the third session, Building an Innovative Biotechnology Ecosystem, Incentives to Support and Attract Investment, moderated by Professor Achilleas Gravanis, teaching pharmacology at the Medical School of the University of Crete. And we should like to call to the floor Mr. Vassilis Kontozamanis, Mr. Ragousis, and Mr. Artavanis, I think, virtually will join us. So you have the floor, sir. I should like to thank the Hellenic American Chamber of Commerce for the kind invitation. We have a very important, in my opinion, subject for the future of the country, not just at the level of economy, but also at the level of education, at the level of health. As we heard rather convincingly, the issue of health does have reference to the economy. So I believe that what we will be discussing today is a subject that is directly linked to the modernization of the country in the years to come. What we usually don't do in Greece is to take a look at what happens in countries that have a tradition in issues, and we try in an organized way to transfer that experience to our country. So for this to happen in biotechnology, let's see what the international ecosystem of biotechnology has as stakeholders and how they react. First of all, especially after the outsourcing, the main source of development of new knowledge and innovation is the academic and research institutions. We know that a large part of private sector investments, primarily in the United States and Europe, goes no longer to in-house research and development, but to close collaborations with academic institutions, institutes, and new startups. The amount is very high and amounts to billions of dollars per year. So the difference is the tax systems and state funding for them to facilitate truly investments from abroad, international investment, that is. The third pillar and factor is the private sector. It's the sector that takes the risk, which is very large in biotechnology and pharmaceutical industry, so that the necessary funds are there and available for research and development to progress. Today we have three very important representatives of all these three stakeholders. Mr. Kontozamanis, former alternate Minister of Health and currently Special Advisor to the Prime Minister in health and biotechnology and pharmaceutical technology issues, was both fortunate and unfortunate to be the first one to deal with the huge and unprecedented for us issue of the pandemic, and in a way that was particularly efficient with his colleagues and his co-workers, and they were the object of discussion the world over. Academia is represented by allow me to call him, legendary figure of academia, Spyros Artavanis-Tsakonas from the University of Harvard University, because he was for years the chief scientific advisor for development of new drugs. And of course, the private sector is represented by Mr. Zachary Ragousis, who comes from a company that is also a legendary figure, at least over the couple of years, with another couple of companies that helped us in the field of medicine, but also society as a whole, to deal the pandemic in a rather efficient way. At this point, I should like you to take no more than 5 or 6 minutes. You're all very experienced, so that we can have time for discussion. I would like to give the floor first to Mr. Kontozamanis for no more than 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Gravanis. I would like to thank the AmCham for the invitation to participate to this very interesting panel. You made rather a reference to the pandemic. Allow me to say that what we lived through, what we experienced, were unique. They were historic moments for the country. And the weapons we used in the pandemic management using biotechnology are the best proof of how much biotechnology has changed the landscape of health and to what extent the development of biotechnology drugs has improved human health overall. In December of 2020, if memory serves, I think we had a first meeting which we presented last May, presented to the Prime Minister. The object was how Greece can become a hub for biotechnology. We had the distinct pleasure of having high-ranking officials from pharma and biotechnology join us, most of them Greeks from the diaspora who had very successful careers abroad and shared their experience with us. And please allow me to say that all these people had been invited in the past again to share their experience, to give suggestions, provide suggestions, and it was said quite clearly that we said these things before. The issue is for you to implement them. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that this is Greece's chance. It's now or never. We need to see how we will implement these proposals, and Greece can in fact become a hub in biotechnology. There are big countries like France, Germany, China, the United States and the United Kingdom who are very active in biotechnology, but there are smaller countries like Belgium, Israel, Switzerland have a very noted and marked presence in biotechnology, and there Greece can in fact take a very small piece as regards the pie of biotechnology. And the competitive edge for our country is the human capital we have. And this can be seen from the study also that we have submitted and we have filed and we're implementing it. It's more an issue of human capital rather than monetary resources in order to develop this sector in Greece. And this is what we are planning to do. The initiatives described in the report have to do primarily with investing in fundamental research, and Spyros Artavanis is indeed the most appropriate person to talk about that, so I will yield the floor to him shortly. And this has to do with the upgrade of both quality and quantity of research in Greece. And of course it's the incentives that need to be provided for companies, biotechnology companies, to be to come to Greece actually. And it has to do primarily with the production of drugs, with clinical trials and biopharmaceutical services. Because, well, we see that companies outsource a lot of services. And here is indeed a field of glory for us, because we do have the human capital and we do have the infrastructures as a country now in order to support such services, and we can and should bring these investments back home. So the part of production is very important. We need to spread the message that, Greece is investment friendly, and we have clinical trials where we have a lot of quite a long way to go. But I believe that everyone is in agreement as to what needs to be done. We know what must be done and we'll do it. So I believe that we will get a great part from the clinical trials, a big chunk of clinical trials. So it's the part of services where Greece can be a hub, and we can reverse the brain drain, bring the people back to Greece. And what is also very important is the findings of our report, which is from our survey or our study. Provided we have the terms and requirements, as we can see from this study and report, to create the appropriate conditions to attract more investments, it is very easy after that for the investments to actually come, because it's more an issue of human resources and human capital rather than funds. And this is the reason why a company would actually come and invest in our country. What I should like to say and reiterate in conclusion, so as not to take up too much of our time, is that indeed the study, and we all know this, concludes by saying that yes, Greece can in fact become a hub for biotechnology despite the fact that we are a small country. And this is made absolutely clear by many factors, and primarily from the developments in biotechnology that show that a very small entity can create something very big and even to be disruptive, as we say in our native tongue. Technology varies and is very wide, so there is room for competition for all companies, be they small or large. And the structure of biotechnological products, primarily as regards cost, they are of high cost, indicates that it is more an issue of, how shall I put it, more an issue of quality rather than the productive capacity of a country, i.e. Greece, in order to produce biological products. And the big advantage, the big edge, is that we have Greeks not only in Greece, but all over the planet, who could come back and will work on research, but also work on management and support services in the field not only of biotechnology, but also of pharmaceuticals. And truly to allow the sector to help the financial growth of the country. There are efforts being made within the country in the field of biotechnology that need to be supported. And I'm confident that in the conference of next year we'll be here again and give you some real tangible examples of what we will have achieved by then. Thank you. Right, thank you then. I believe that the most convincing way for the government to convince us, Mr. Kontozamanis, that they are indeed interested in biotechnology is with the selection of the president of the National Council for Research, Technology and Innovation. It's our next speaker, Professor Spyros Artavanis-Tsakonas, who has the tremendous opportunity and advantage to live for a great number of years. I will not say exactly how many years. If he wishes to divulge that information, he may, in Boston, where I believe that we can learn a lot of things, primarily through his experience of Spyros Artavanis, who, as I said, has two caps. He is a great researcher, but also a person who tried throughout his life to transfer some of that knowledge and translate it for the good of patients and the industry as a whole. So Spyros, you have the floor, sir. But before Mr. Artavanis starts, Mr. Gravanis put the issue very correctly, and the equation I have to give you, that in order to have biotechnology, so this is a word that we have not defined appropriately. So the basis for innovation in this field is one, and it's single. It is the quality of basic science, and that is all. Mr. Bourla or Mr. Ragousis will not come to Greece to invest if they do not know that in science, I'm talking about in science, that they need to invest in drug innovation if they don't know that there will be quality. In order to have quality, on the other hand, what we need, undoubtedly, is serious support on behalf of the government. And this is something that I think the government realizes from what I've already talked about in my capacity as president of the National Council for Research, Technology and Innovation. And I believe that there is consent. We are trying in every possible way to correct what is wrong in education, and as Achilleas said, we cannot distinguish between the third grade education from everything else. And without research, and high quality research, it is impossible to have an appropriate and innovative biotechnological innovative system. I feel that, like Mr. Kontozamanis said, the wish for people to come back from abroad where they have been very successful in these sciences is indeed something that we will need to try and make. How will these people come? We need to give them not only the opportunities to progress in their science, but we also need to give them financial incentives, actually, to have to make a livelihood. Someone who has had a certain career abroad, be that in Europe or in the States, for them to come back to Greece and continue their career in Greece. If a 40-year-old with 2 children comes to Greece, it's not an easy task to come with $2,000 or 2,000 euros per month. It's very difficult. So there are things that we can do immediately to help with the brain drain that Mr. Kontozamanis was talking about, but also science. Can we do that? Do we have the human capital in Greece so that by correcting bureaucracy and red tape and even increasing the money we can do something important? I believe that yes, we can. And I do not think that the first thing we need is money. Money is definitely necessary, and the more money you give us, the better it will be. But it's not the money that is the key and the most important thing. The most important thing is to create, to come up with ways to combat red tape and the fragmentation of money. The Ministry of Health, the Ministry for Development, the Ministry for Health, the Digital Governance, the Agricultural Ministry, all these ministries have money that supposedly are spent on research. If we were to put all this money together under a single umbrella, which is my personal crusade to make this umbrella as a single space, I believe that we will advance very, very fast. Not in 10 or 20 years, but we can advance rapidly. There are exceptional cores in Greece. We have excellent quality of research in biotechnology, and there are, of course, parts that should not exist. So this is what we need, this strict evaluation. What we're trying to do is to raise the quality and increase the quality of research. This is the key issue for Mr. Ragousis, to be able to go to Mr. Bourla and tell him that here we have something important, something significant. How else will he go to Mr. Bourla and say we have something important? We may be cheaper. Or the clinical trials we talked about earlier with Mr. Kontozamanis are something entirely different than research and innovation. Innovation in clinical research will not be performed by us. We will simply provide our services. So I should like to thank you very much for the invitation. I should like to stop here. I said enough and we can start the discussion. Thank you very much, Spyros. We will come back to the issues you raised, and let's move on with Mr. Zachary Ragousis. who, dear friends, is here because in a very well documented way, Pfizer is interested in the country. And he's a very good example, at least to us who have been in Greece for a great number of years, in Crete 30 years, and we were fortunate enough to have an extrovertness over the past years towards the United States. It was really, Mr. Ragousis, a pleasant surprise regarding the power and the strength with which Pfizer decided to invest in Greek scientists and Greek society. So, what are the main criteria that led you as a company, apart from the fact that the CEO of your company is a well-gifted Greek from Thessaloniki? No, he took into consideration the business elements that led you to come here with this very great strength, because it's a huge force, it's a huge investment to Thessaloniki, and not only there. So, having Greece set a goal or a target to enter the field of biotechnology is the best thing that can actually bring everyone together. What I was saying before is that I'm very honored and I'm very interested in what you have to say, and we have to thank you on behalf of Pfizer. Going back to the regular courses, say that we found things in Greece, and we didn't find it just in Thessaloniki. We also found that in Crete, in Patras, and in Athens. It was the necessary potential and the terms to invest where we actually invested, because it is digital research and technology. So let's see how a company may think in biotechnology. Could I please have my presentation up on the screen? Right. So I think that we should first of all say that you started with the biotechnology ecosystem term, and I think that what counts is to take a look at the ecosystem and see the dynamics that it has, and to see it in a wider way. A big company starts looking at the global and reaches down to the local level. So let's take a look and see that as far as research and development investments are concerned in the field of biotechnology, over the past few years, we will see that the United States are still the leader, and they have a part of the market, and we also see China coming up second, and those who appear to be losing part of the market is Europe. Now, let's look into that, because this will clearly activate the EU's reflexes that Greece can put to good use as to the investments that may take place. Is the health sector important for Europe? Yes, it is. If you can look at this chart, in the United States, technology sectors are primarily those that absorb the largest percentage. It's ICT service. If we take a look in Europe, it's automobiles and other transport. Second is the health industry. But is health industry in biotechnology what interests us? No, unfortunately not. Observing this diagram, one can see that the United States are still dominant, and the investments made in biotechnology are 11 times more than those performed in Europe, and the trend is not optimistic for the EU. The more we progress, the lower it goes. Europe still invests in traditional pharmaceutical industry, and this is a good thing because, well, it secures jobs for a large part of the population and a big part of the market. But the question is, how is this linked with today's discussion, which is innovation, research, and research in, well, state-of-the-art areas. There is a very recent analysis in the EU that says something that I really liked it, which is why I will repeat it. Innovation will come. Innovation will happen. The question is where and when. The where is determined by the comparative parts and comparative shares of investment. The when is the convergence of research sectors and investments in the same time and place. Then we will have the result we are looking for. So let's take a look at ATMPs, which is advanced therapy medicinal products, gene therapies and all these things. You see, in the green line we have the EU, okay, it's Europe rather, which maintains more or less the same level of investment, whereas the United States and China increase them. And it's important because this is a snapshot of the future today. It shows a trend. It's indicative of a trend. And I believe that if one were to study all the analysis of Europe, this is a message well received by Europe. And they will transfer funds where they must. The issue is for Greece to participate in all this. So let me move to the key question we have here. What is the incentive that will drive a country or an entire continent to invest in this direction or the other? You will see that the most important things on the slide are the following. One of them is that progressively the Chinese market is increasing. The Chinese market is starting to adopt patent protecting rules and regulations. And if you see my first point, it's impressive. In a period spanning 20 years, the PhDs produced by China are slightly more than those in the United States. 20 years ago, they weren't even comparable. Which begs the question, who is innovative and who is the pioneer in this thing? Well, of course, it's the academia. They move ahead and everyone else follows. So let's see from this whole study, I have distilled a few things. There's a lot of interesting things. I just got the key drivers. The first and foremost, it was already mentioned. I don't want to spend any more time. It's the quality of the scientific ecosystem, the ecosystem that exists, and it has a lot of elements. It's Mr. Gravanis, how Mr. Gravanis started with his presentation, and I think we'll need to take a look at this because you see the second bullet point is that one needs centers of excellence, research scientists, and skilled specialized research staff. And this is the general direction of the state today. Anyone with an eye out for news knows that where we invest as a country is the beginning. After academia and academic knowledge, what one needs is such centers and institutes where someone can see a practical connection between academic knowledge and the potential implementation and application in the future. I think it was, well, indirectly mentioned that this sector does not measure cost. Biotechnology does not go where cheap potential is needed, and this is also very good for Greece, because Greece is not a country that is competitive in terms of cost, and of course it cannot compete against India or China in that respect. And of course there is digital infrastructure. It is easy to build digital infrastructures in Greece, and this is proven, and I'm answering to your question now. The fact that we did have the previous two elements, academic capacity and even plethora of supply of competent people. We had the institutes in all those countries I mentioned. It's simply that Thessaloniki has the ideal size as a city. So they gave us the opportunity to invest there. In biotechnology, we need another couple of steps before we reach that point. Here on this slide, I have borrowed a piece of data of how technology influences clinical trials. Another thing is to be able to have not an ecosystem, but a structured, organized system that is particularly competitive, because today, unfortunately, not only in Europe, but the world over, no one comes to check your space, where your sites are, where your buildings are, the premises, or your people. What they see is your digital footprint. And this is very important, because this can be good for us. Okay, maybe our digital footprints, if we build it correctly, maybe even better than the reality, but we need to have our digital copy, our digital avatar. As far as we're concerned, and when I say we, I mean the companies, what clearly plays a role is the current market. If the new product is perceived by a state, a continent, or a community as their asset rather than cost, then a door opens that leads to biotechnology. Otherwise, a similar door may very well close. It is clearly very important at this point to include in the conversation all stakeholders, all those who will be influenced by biotechnology. And of course, I'm not just talking about the academia, institutes, and the companies, but also those who will be the recipients, the patients. They need to be ready. So a question would be, how many Greeks would be willing to participate in a study or a vaccine clinical trial, not of a treatable disease or a curable disease, because most of the time these trials have to do with advanced stage patients, so they participate. So what sort of mentality or mindset do we have as Greeks, and let's not ask about the others, to participate in something like this? So it needs a mentality of acceptance of innovation and participation in innovation. Because something that was mentioned early on is that innovation does have risks that need to be calculated. I will keep this for the end of the discussion, and I will put a full stop here because I used up too much of the time available. So my answer is that yes, we were mature for the investment made in Thessaloniki, because you see that there's a series of investments. It's not just us, but please heed this, that it's not the same investment at the same level. I mean, in digital economy, what does one want? Is a good connection, computers and brains. Well, Greece has all three of them, and it also has a good environment. Biotechnology wants and needs something extra, which is institutes that not only produce PhDs at the universities, but for these PhDs to have direct practical implementation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ragousis, and I will start with some comments and second questions from you.
Let me start by saying that indeed digital technology does not regard only the part of health. One of my topics in my research, both in Greece and Boston, is tissue mechanics. There is an important need for new materials and create new biological devices that are medications by themselves. It is in these new types of pharmacology, which is not only chemicals, but also it can be devices plus cells plus genes. It's not a symptomatic treatment, but it's a systematic treatment. In other words, it solves the problem. There's an important area here for AI and machine learning to design this kind of new types of materials. Biomaterials, in other words, micro devices, which are either used for diagnosis or for treatment. I believe that Pfizer's example, which has already some types of applications of this kind, have to be seen in both academic and entrepreneurial terms. This is a more ambitious part that will need liquid biochemistry and biology so that it can be um, utilized this way. So, what do you believe about this idea, the including this type of activity, so that the industry worldwide will have ideas so as to go to the proof of concept stage for the new devices? Many say that there is no prototype of treatment can be created in Europe, in Greece. I'm sorry, but this got me an idea that can be promoted internationally, and this exists already in Greece. This is very important and very interesting, both for Pfizer and for other pharmaceutical companies. In Thessaloniki, we have started learning the ecosystem, and we have started already some discussions. There are some institutes and groups of people that are going to be tested via some initial projects. In Thessaloniki, we don't have only local programs, but we have also programs that run in the USA. So it is nice to involve some local bodies so that the knowledge and capacity can be transferred. And this way, if there is a good idea out there, we can adopt it early on. We are still beginning our work, but we are rather fast in our progress. And very soon we'll be able to present something. Maybe in 6 or 9 months from today, we're going to present some first results of these first contacts. But of course, this is not easy. You know this better than me. Cooperation needs time. And a common view on things. Not like we don't want just to protect, we want to provide new solutions. And we know that all the stakeholders can be committed to invest in time and effort. A second question related to the private sector. I see some trends in recently. We have many changes in the Greek landscape recently in many levels. The mentality within the academic institutions about research. There was no research at all some decades ago. And I also see the private pharmaceutics industry. They are bolder. They are taking risks. For example, I cooperate with the new biotechnological park, Athens Life Tech Park at Sparta. This is another positive surprise. I see that the private sector slowly but very seriously proceeds to investments which are not state subsidized. So they start this kind of efforts. I think that the Greek industry has to adopt this philosophy and act as an intermediate with the international industry. I would like your comment on this. What do you think that the Greek pharmaceuticals companies need to change in their mentality? And I'm speaking about Alpen, Pharmaten, Dermo Pharmaceuticals, in order to undertake this role. I know these examples myself. I am sure that there are more. Which do you think that should be the characteristics for this decision-taking so that the pharmaceutical industry can enter this innovation era. Very quickly, very briefly, because we don't have much time, there is no risk to invest in this area because this is a long-term sustainability game. So it is necessary for the companies to invest there, and the new investment law gives the companies and the investors the opportunity to put their monies in these kind of operations. The alternative would be to stay with the traditional chemical drugs production. In my opinion, it is good that the Greek companies are bold, and I think that more of them should do so. I think that today we see the pioneers of the future. The remaining companies should ask themselves, why do the others invest in these innovative solutions? Mr. Tsakonas, in the academic community, we know that there are national science foundations in other countries, for example, where which establishes a pillar of research at a national level. As the president of such an organization, very briefly, please, how do you see this endeavor being actualized? As you know, from the very first moment that I undertook the leadership of ESETEC, along with the previous president, Mr. Venizakis, we started focusing on what you mentioned. It's one of my priorities. We need to create a uniform area. It's not an NSF, it's something different. And there, we should develop national research strategy. Also, funding. This is something that we want to create. There's a lot of discussions with all the stakeholders so that we can be able to go to the government and propose something very concrete. My own opinion, in its a personal opinion, is that we should have a Ministry of Research and Development. The basic characteristic of such a ministry is to listen to the opinion of professionals in the area. The national strategy for research and the coordination of research in such a ministry or an organization, if you like, should not take place, should not be conducted by bureaucrats, but professionals from the market. I believe that this is very important and very critical. This single area is actually a concept very important for research to grow. Without this, we are not having any actual solution to the problem. Mr. Kontozamanis, you represent the state here, so one of the main elements that attract investments, as you know, is to provide tax and economic and financial motives so that major companies take the risk for investing in a country which doesn't have a tradition until today in activities like biotechnology, etc. So, in your opinion, what should the government see, and so that the public discussion can open and reach a political consensus in order to become attractive in serious investments? Of course, we need to have a government that believes in investments and it believes in synergies with the private sector. And this current government believes in the aforementioned. In the last couple of years, we have given already some tax tax motives, and there are further initiatives that will follow. And we have some other proposals in mind so as to establish a framework that will attract investments. So we have the knowledge, we know what has to take place, we know how to do it. So we hope that very soon we're going to have very tangible results. The most important thing, allow me to say, the most important conclusion of this report, of this study, is that these efforts should be longer than the term of our government. We shouldn't see changes every time that the government changes or our ministry changes. We don't want to see decisions being disrupted, because only this way we can give the message to the companies, to the entrepreneurs, that Greece indeed is an area, is a country where somebody can invest. This whole effort on biotechnology has been supported by Stelios Papadopoulos a lot, who is going to be with us in the next panel. He's a very important personality in biotechnology. It was our honor that we worked together along with Spyros Artavanis and all the other personalities that invested in time and shared their ideas with you. I met with Stelios virtually online every Thursday night with our team for 1.5 years in order to work towards this direction. It's a very important advantage for our country to have this kind of scientists along with the government. Thank you very much. So next year, I'm going to propose that you come again so that you will be able to announce the results of your effort to the benefit of biotechnology. Thank you very much for following our discussion.